All right, we are live. This is the happy birthday to my only daughter edition of Get a Clue in 52, September 13th. Hello to all the Virgos out there in the world, my daughter included. But we're doing another installment of Get a Clue in 52 for speakers, speaker edition with Sue Mathieson from all the way down under in Melbourne, Australia. Happy Friday, the 13th. It's Saturday for you, right? So it's the 14th for you, yeah?
Yes, it is.
Let me say welcome. You know, we got a tip to read. It's gonna be tip number 37 today. We've been doing this all year long. We're sprinting towards the finish line, right? It's been quite a journey. We still got good handfuls to go. But before we get into the word for word, how are you, Sue? How's your week been? What do you got?
It's been a busy week, and today I'm looking forward to going and seeing my daughter act in her final one-act play festival. So that'll be fun. Yes.
All right.
It's
I'm a
a
big
play
fan
called
of
Turbulence. Yeah.
What
You're a big
Turbulence?
fan of?
Oh, no, there's a little bit of a delay right now. Let's see if we can get that settled.
Yeah, I might have a lag in my internet connection.
Okay, yeah. All right. I didn't know whose side it was on. All right. Well, that'll stabilize itself at some point. But let's go ahead and, I guess, get into it, right? By now, everybody knows, I would, if this is the first time you're ever tuning in, this is Get a Clue in 52. This is the fourth Get a Clue in 52 book that I've written. It's a soft skills series of books. They all have 52 tips, and they all have 5 categories. So we did the original Get a Clue in 52 for expanding self and business. We did Get a Clue in 52, the entrepreneur edition. We did Get a Clue in 52 for coaches. And now we're doing Get a Clue in 52 for speakers. In this case, with Sue as my co-author, we're capturing the mentor-mentee, the coach-coachee, that we're trying to capture the dialogues in that relationship. We want people to imagine how powerful it is to what emerges in that relationship. So it's kind of interesting too, Sue, that it's been traditional this year that we've got the tip reading, and then there's so much additional value that comes through just in the dialogue around the tip, right? So there's layers and layers. And I think that our dialogues in and around the tip reading and after the tip reading, especially if somebody else comes on through like Bion or Patty or Dee or some of the other people that like to chime in, the conversations get so rich. But it's a little bit of a slice of this mentor-mentee, immersion, right? Like get yourself immersed in that form of personal professional growth learning. So you guys know I'm Jeff Klubeck. I'm the founder and author of The Integrity Game. And The Integrity Game is actually section 1 of this book. I've mentioned that all of the Get a Clue in 52 books, they have 5 categories. So Sue and I, we started with The Integrity Game, which is its own book, but the 10-point model of The Integrity Game converted to the first 10 tips to establish our structural integrity, our foundation, our resilience, our focus, our unwavering commitment to either building a speaking practice and career or building our career through speaking, right? Either way, we want the structural integrity, right? And then with that foundation, after those 10 tips, we got into bring out your brand. And now this is the color, the flavor, the differentiation, the brand promises, the competitive advantages, the avoiding the humiliation of being too humble, right? We got to let the world know who we are and why we're different and why us instead of others, right? Then we moved to section 3, which is be fearless. And what's the focus of section 3 was 8 steps to fearless public speaking. 8 steps to fearless public speaking. It's exciting now, Sue, because the fall semester has started, and now I'm in the classroom teaching at public speaking at San Diego State again, and I'm in the middle of classroom environment teaching people through the 8 steps. And next week they're going to deliver their first speech where they're using the 8 steps to prepare. But I'm thinking back to earlier in the summer when we were unveiling these tips in the context of personal and professional growth, right? They transfer in different contexts, right? But the idea is we started with 2 mindset tips in section 3, and then tips 23 through 30 were the 8 steps to fearless public speaking. And then tip number 27 is step 5. So when we got to tip 27, we unveiled step 5 in the 8-step process, and it's outlining, but we only talked about it from a strategic perspective. What's the strategy of outlining. Why did we do that? Because we know that outlining is so important to organizing our thoughts and getting ourselves ready to deliver conversationally, to deliver fearlessly, to be ourselves on stage. There's so many things I could say about that. The bottom line is we knew that it was strategic because what we wanted to get into in section 4, section 4 is the elements, forms, and functions of outlining. Okay. And that's where we're at. And then today it's tip number 37. But before we get to 37, the first tip in section 4 was the mindset of the audience. Then we got into our introduction of our speech. The first thing that we want to do is command attention. As soon as we have attention, we want to state what our topic, our experience, our event, or our keynote, what our speech is about. Then we want to let the audience know why they should listen, or motivate their listening, motivate the listener, motivate the listening, right? Most audiences know why they're there, but if we can give them 1 or 2 other reasons why they are going to get value out of it, we might engage them more and keep them engaged. Ultimately, why listen to us? Who are we to be delivering this information? So sometimes it's third-party introduction, communicates our credibility. Sometimes we're responsible for communicating our credibility by ourselves, but there's always a consideration as to how are we going to establish our credibility for giving this talk. It's important. And then signpost ahead. We want to preview. Where is this going? And as a matter of review, what we're doing when we talk about the mind of the audience, we know as speakers that there are questions that are going to come up automatically in the minds of the audience. And what we want to do is answer them before they ask them. Right?
Yeah.
So I know they're going to say, should I pay attention? Well, guess what? The first thing I'm going to do is grab your attention. Then they're going to say, okay, you got my attention. So what's this about? Well, guess what? I'm going to tell you what it's about. Right? And then, okay, well, you got my attention and I know what this is about, but why should I listen? Well, I'm going to tell you why you should listen. I'm going to give you 2 or 3 reasons why you should listen. And I'm going to let you know that while you're here listening for this reason, there may be other people in the audience that are listening for this reason or that reason. Okay, you got my attention. I know what it's about and why I should listen, but why should I listen to you? Well, because I'm Jeff Kluback. No, I'm joking. I'm normally way more humble than that. Right. Right. But I'm not going to go into detail about my background. Right. It's like, okay, I know what this is about. Oh, you got my attention. I know what it's about. Why I should listen to you. But where are we going with all of this? How long am I going to be here? Where is this going? Where is this headed? Right? And so that's when we got to signpost ahead. Like, first I'm going to tell you about this. Then I'm going to tell you about this. And then I'm going to tell you about that. Very simple. So now that you understand what's happening, let's go ahead and get into it. Okay. But what I just did right there was effectively today's tip. Never underestimate effective transitions. So I'm ready to read word for word. Before I do, I always give myself a chance to take a deep breath and maybe a sip of something. When I ask, do you have any comments or questions or insights or anything to add to that summary before we get into the word for word, Sue?
As you were going through those first 5 elements, what came to my mind was remembering those questions, and I was reflecting on sitting in an audience. Those questions come through subconsciously, and
like weeds, they grow on their own.
they do. So it's just really important. I guess, the importance of addressing them can't be underemphasized.
Well, can I jump in? Addressing them is one thing. That would be good enough. I want to address them because address them means they already exist. I want to preempt them.
Yeah.
Do you understand? I think I know what you meant, and I think you know what I mean, right? Like you meant what I just said, but I'm saying it with deliberate. Like I'm deliberately saying, I don't want the audience to even hear their own self-talk.
Yeah, you want to be ahead of them.
I want to answer it before they ask it. Before they ask it out loud, before they hear it in their own, before it comes up on its own, I want to keep it where, I want to just get rid of it. I want to preempt it, or like not address it, but maybe if there's such a thing, pre-dress it. You follow, right?
I think I was meaning, when I said address, I was meaning from the point of view of, as a speaker during the preparation, making sure that I've taken account of that in my preparation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I knew we meant the same thing. I just wanted to I just wanted to add a layer there. Well, cool. What else? What else? Anything else? Like, you've been an audience member in presentations. We're doing this as speakers for speakers, tips for speaking, but we're going to be I tell this to my students. I'm like, hey, how many of you are concerned about the 4 speeches you have to give? And they all raise their hand like, yeah, I got to give 4 speeches. Oh, no. I'm like, great. There's 22 of you. You have to be an audience member 84 times.
Yes.
Or 81 times, or whatever the math is. Excuse me, I'm not a good math guy, right? But right, like, your job as an audience, I tell my students, your job as an audience member to be supportive listener for your classmates is way more important than your job as a speaker. You're going to come up and speak 4 times, but 4 times 21 is 84, right? You're going to be an audience member 84 times.
Yeah.
So get ready for listening and understand from the listener's perspective, what do you need to do as a speaker, right? If you're getting bored with your classmates, if you start tuning out and imagining your other classes, or if you attempted to look at your phone and do social media when your classmates are speaking, then what does that tell you about who you need to be as a speaker to command attention and keep attention and keep your audience with you? And you follow them, right? So I love what you're adding there, is that, hey, we're talking about speaking, but wow, can we learn a lot if we imagine the perspective of audience, if we reflect on our own experiences as audience members.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. All right. Anything else? Anything else?
Oh, it's just, the other thing I was going to add was to that, being an audience member, is when we are listening to someone else speaking, when we're sitting in the audience, put ourselves in their shoes and be engaged, give them eye contact. Like, how much better does it enhance their experience when they're up on stage, because we're supporting them?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
As an audience member.
Yeah, cohesive environment and supportive audience and all of that's definitely in the classroom learning environment. We need to all love each other. You know, it's like hard to like say that on day one. Like, hey, guess what? We're all going to love each other. Everybody's looking around like, what? No, what I mean is, and psychological safety, emotionally safe, be yourself, be yourself. I tell my students 2 things in week 1. You get to be yourself, but you got to be an adult. If you want to be treated like a child, you're in the wrong classroom. Go back to high school if you want to be treated like a child. Right? But you're in college now, right? And even high school. Anyway, all right. What are we ready to go? Word for word?
Yeah, we're ready to go.
Okay. So sometimes your dialogue leads off the tip, but not today. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump right in if you're following at home. And by the way, I am going to end up screen sharing at some point. I took a little look ahead to the tip, and I think I refer to the templates or sample templates that we put. So at some point I may end up screen sharing. So be ready for that. But here we go. Remember, and by the way, also remember that we're in section 4, elements, forms, and functions. So the first element was, right? The first element was grabbing attention. Second element was a topic or a thesis statement to be academic. Third element was give audiences reasons to listen, remind audiences why they should listen. Fourth element was credibility, establish your credibility and why they should listen to us or you as the speaker. And then the 5th element was previewing, letting them know where this is headed. So the effective transition statements are the 6th element. So here we go word for word. Element 6, transitions. Equally easy to understand and deliver, and just as important in keeping your audience oriented / connected with your speech, are effective transitions. After all, now that you've delivered all 5 elements of an effective introduction, it is time for you to move into elaborating on your first main point. And now we're going to talk about ... a transition. A transition is 1 or 2, but no more than 1 or 2 sentences that take you and your audience from one part of your speech to another. The most effective transitions will accomplish 2 things. 1, they will bring closure to what you were talking about. And 2, they will introduce what you will be talking about next. A transition also serves the same function as the 5th element of your introduction. But instead of previewing an entire speech, it previews a main or a subpoint within your speech. Be careful to make sure you're not lazy or incomplete with your transitions. In your mind, you might know exactly where you are going. It might be perfectly clear to you that you are done with a point or subpoint and ready to move on to a new point or subpoint. But do not assume it is clear to your audience. And this is like bold. If you have a copy of the book at home, this is bold. Be clear and deliberate about including both objectives of transitions in your transitions. Number one, closure to what was discussed. Number two, preview of what is coming next.
Yeah, so it makes sense that there needs to be some relationship between the previous point and what is coming next. Otherwise, the audience will become lost or potentially confused.
That's right. So external transitions. If a speech has three main points, it should have at least four external transitions. An external transition can be thought of as a major transition in getting, major transition in that, and there's a typo there, in that it gets you. Make a note there for like volume 2 if we do a rewrite on this. It's like I always want to if I get 20 typos, I'll redo it and republish. If it's less than 20, okay, we're okay with it, right? Hey, we're human beings here. Okay. All right, here we go. An external transition can be thought of as a major transition in that it gets you from one major part of your speech to the next. Take a look. Here we go. Take a look at the sample outline at the end of this section, and you will see I have included. So I'm going to pause the word for word. Give me a minute to bring this up. We're going to go share screen. We're going to do blah, blah. We're going to go window, and we're going to go to the book, and we're going to go. All right. Can you see the book? Can you see my screen? All right. Thank you. So I'm going to read word for word, but what I'm going to put up while I'm reading word for word, here we go. So this is like a sample. This is a template, a skeleton template. You can see the 5 elements. Grab attention. Tell us what it's about, why we should listen to you, and tell us where this is going. So the 6th element right here is in the transitions. You guys see that?
Yes.
I say you guys because that's Yusu and others, right? So I'm saying transition from the intro to the first main point. It helps the audience navigate. But what I want to show you, this is an external transition that I'm talking about in the word for word, because it's taking me from one major part of my speech, which is my intro, into the next major part of my speech, which is the body. I also have an external transition here to get from my first main point to my second main point. And you can see another external transition from second to third, and then another transition from my body to my conclusion. So these are the 4 external transitions that I'm referring to. I'll just leave this up, and I'm going to go back to word for word reading now. So take a look at the sample outline I have at the end of this section. You will see I've included a major external transition to get me from my introduction to my body, another to get me from my first main point to my second main point, another to get me from my second main point to my third main point, and finally a transition to get me from my body into my conclusion. Minor transitions or internal transitions. What you do not see in the sample but may wish to include in your own speech are internal or minor transitions that you get you from subpoint to other subpoints within any main point. So what I mean by that is, if we could see here, I've got one subpoint and another subpoint. So I could put a transition right here. Hey, now that I've told you what I did before the baseball game, let me tell you what I did after the baseball game. And it's a very simple internal minor transition that lets my audience know I'm done talking about the first subpoint, and now I'm moving on to the second subpoint. Does that make sense, Sue? Can you see it visually as I go through it like that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So back to word for word reading from the tip. Sometimes the decision to include minor transitions is a function of the content connecting better with a transition. Sometimes it's a matter of needing 30 more seconds worth of speech to fill the context. Usually your audience will not be offended by too many transitions. I'm going to come back to that with a little joke. Okay. Unlike other things you can do too much of in a speech, transitions are usually welcomed by the audience because, again, they orient the audience and keep them connected to what's happening and where you are going. 3 elements of a conclusion. Well, now that you have told them what you're going to tell them, and you've told them, the only thing left to do is to tell them what you've told them. Sound difficult? It's not. The conclusion of your speech might be the easiest part to write and deliver. But make no mistake, it must be done completely and thoroughly. Quite recently, which isn't so recently anymore because we wrote this last year. So like quite recently plus a year. Recently, I was at a conference where the speaker was killing it. great content, super connections with the audience, excellent nonverbal communication in terms of voice, eye contact, gestures, expressions, and use or command of the entire stage. And then it all fell apart in his conclusion because he didn't have one. I was shocked. He just ran out of time and walked off stage without any summary or closing remarks that put the speech in a nice little take-home package for his audience. The loudest and most memorable thing he said in his 20 minutes, ironically, was what he failed to say. No conclusion. So three simple elements, and you can see them here, right? 3 simple elements could have saved him and made his the most memorable and highly scored speech of the entire conference. Restating the main points, giving the audience reasons to remember or call to action, and an effective tie back to wrap up that gives closure to the speech as a whole. So let's take a closer look at each element starting with restating the main points. So now we're done reading the tip on transitions. I previewed the next 3 tips in section 4. So next week, we're going to talk about restating our topic statement or restating our main points, making sure there's reasons to remember, really taking advantage of that one. Like if there's nothing else you get from this speech, if there's only one thing you remember from my entire talk today, make sure you don't want to waste that opportunity. And then of course, little humor, little tie back, little wrap up, little wit, where we use a joke or we tie back to something that we may have said all the way up here in our attention getter that gives that audience that sense of cohesion, completeness, that wraps it all in a nice package. So these are elementary elements. They're fundamental elements of basic public speaking education. But what I've learned is people try to skip the fundamentals and get to mastery. And I'm here to tell you that the road to mastery is paved with fundamentals. What I was just showing everybody, 5 elements of an intro, effective 2-part transitions, and 3 elements of a conclusion. Practice that 5, 10, 15 times, then change it up. Then take some chances. Then show how great you are, right? But the road to mastery is paved with fun. Yeah, I try to put the fun back in the fundamentals, but make no mistake about it. The road to mastery is paved with fundamentals. So there you have it. Sue, tip number 37, word for word. And what do you got, Sue? Comments, feedback, questions?
I did have a question. You right at the start, you used an example of a transition being, and now we're going to talk about. What might be some other examples? Because I think one of the traps is not to fall into repeating the same words.
Yeah, great.
Yes.
Yeah, great question. So, all right, here's my first response. The first tip is, and it's kind of funny because you don't want to repeat the same words, so don't, okay? What you do want to memorize is my objective, right?
Yeah.
My objective. And this is part and parcel to everything we're trying to teach about public speaking prep, okay? I'm telling my students in the classroom, the outline is not the speech. It's just step 5 in preparing. So whatever you write in your outline, you're not committed to saying the exact words that you write in your outline. Your outline is just to organize your thoughts and give you the practicing tool that then transitions into your visuals, that transitions into what you'll practice from, and then you trust yourself to be yourself. So what I want to memorize is not the exact words I'm going to say in my attention getter. How many of you would like to get better at public speaking today? Okay, great. Well, today we're going to talk about 8 steps to fearless public speaking. You hear I'm trying to mimic what it would sound like word for word?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? I don't want to memorize the exact words. What I want to memorize is grab their attention. Hey, everybody, what's that behind you? It's confidence in public speaking. So today we're going to, now, even if I wrote, how many of you would like to get better at public speaking? If I wrote that in my outline, I don't have to say that word for word. What I have to do is grab attention. Same thing with transitions. Does this make sense?
Yes.
So what I want to memorize is closure and preview. That's what's in my mind. Closure and preview.
Yep. Right.
So now you want to get away from sounding the same thing and being repeating, right? And sometimes communication is critical in its need for repetition, or critically needs repetition. And sometimes, like, the key to effective communication is repetition, right? Like, you go through the drive-through window, you want them to repeat back to you what your order is, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So feedback and fidelity and, making sure that message intended, message received. So sometimes repetition is key in burning a groove into the brain and making sure things are deepened rather than surface. And so sometimes repetition is key. So I wouldn't just that's the second piece. I wouldn't fundamentally stay away from repeating the same thing just for the sake of not repeating the same thing. Some things
Okay.
are to be repeated.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Now, having said that, let's talk about some different ways of doing it. Right. Hey, now that I've given you two answers to the question, I'm about to give you a third answer. You hear what I just did?
Yeah. Yeah.
That was a transition sentence.
Yes.
And I'm doing it with my non-verbally. Now that I've given you the first two answers to your question, let me give you the third answer.
Mm.
Right?
Mm.
Does that make sense to you, right? That's a different
Yeah.
way of saying it. Watch. Does anybody have any questions about what we just covered? Okay, great. With no more questions, then I'll be moving on to what we need to cover next.
Mm.
So that's one way of getting at it. Does this make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think too, it's matching the nonverbal too with.
Oh,
helping.
remember. How you're saying what you're saying is in fact what you're really saying.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And words are only 7%, 8% maybe of what we really communicate. And so voice and tone and projection and gestures and expressions and use of space in the room and all of that's super important. You could watch me speak and in the name of humility, people have told me that you could watch me speak with the volume down and still feel like you're getting it.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm
Yes.
so animated. I'm so like when I'm speaking, I'm conducting, I'm facilitating, I'm ushering. This is the point that I'm making. I'm not speaking to and at my audience. I'm connecting with my audience and taking them with me through the speech. We're in it together. Is what I'm trying to do. Right?
Yeah.
So now
Yeah.
back to effective transitions. There's a lot more I could say about this thing that I was just talking about, but I only have time to cover what I've covered. So with your permission, I'll be moving on to my next main point. So, right? Like, does anybody have questions about? I only have time for, right? And now it's an opportunity too. Like you want to get mastery level. Hey, for those of you that have more questions about we just covered, make sure you've got my phone number. It's on the slides. I'm easy to find on social media. Most of you will have some questions about what we covered. So write those down and understand. I promise I'm available after today's talk. What I'd like to do now is move on to the next set of questions I'm going to create for you. Hear what I'm doing?
Yeah.
So now I just told people to contact me after the presentation while I'm transitioning from one part of my talk to the next.
Yes. Yes.
You follow? So you're only limited by your creativity. What I know I need to do is I need to let my audience know I'm not talking about this anymore. And I'm going to be talking about this. And now, however, what if I say, hey, I'm done with that. I'm moving on to this. Everybody cool?
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, like you could be fun. Like, does anybody want to stay in point number one while I move on to point number two? Or are you guys all coming with me? Now, do you follow? If I just keep these two anchors in my head, closure, preview, now all of a sudden the creativity comes around. But if I'm focused on specific words, I can't be as creative. Is this helping?
Oh, it is. And what I love about some of the examples that you're giving is you are also preempting the questions that the audience are going to have in their mind as you're going along. Because if you've only got a certain amount of time to speak to different elements of your speech or your presentation, you might get through a certain section and audience members are going, oh, hang on, I wanted to talk more about that. But as an example, by you saying, I know you're going to have questions about this. There's my number. There's my contact details. Hit me up. But for now, we're going to keep moving. Like you're giving them the opportunity to go, oh, okay, that's okay.
Right. It's not an open loop that's still running that dilutes your attention for where I'm going.
Exactly. Yep. It allows them to go, oh, okay, I can put my questions down. I'm okay to move on.
That's right.
Because I've got an opportunity later on to address those.
Yeah,
I love it.
in the classroom, I've come up with this neat little hook, and it emerged organically. But the more I like it, the more I like it. The more I use it, the more I like it. The more I like it, the more I use it. No Aztec left behind. So I said that to basically say, hey, you're all going to do well in here as long as you all want to do well. If you run and jump, I promise I'm going to get every single one of you over the hurdle as long as you run and jump. Those of you that expect to stay at the starting line and you expect me to leave the hurdle and go pull you, lift you, drag you, pull you, throw you over the hurdle, you're going to have a problem, right? But for those of you that want to run and jump, I'm here to get you over the hurdle. But regardless of where you're at on that continuum, no Aztec left behind. You're going to have to work harder at doing poorly in this class than you're going to have to work to do well, because I've made it as easy as possible. I've been doing this for years. I know all the questions you have. I know all the concerns you have. I'm in my 23rd year of teaching public speaking. There's nothing new under the sun when it comes to dealing with students who are learning public speaking. So I've thought about all of it. I got all of the learning materials. I got the fill in the blanks. I got the samples. I got the recordings. I got right? So you never get to say, oh, I missed class. I don't know what to do. No, watch the recording. Now you know exactly what to do, right? Like I've preempted any ability for students to BS themselves. Just run and jump. You know what to do. Run and jump, right? And no Aztec left behind. But now that becomes a seed in my classroom. Like, hey, no Aztec left behind. Are there any questions about what we've covered? Before I move on, no Aztec left behind. Are there any questions? There's nothing more important than your questions. Are there any questions about what I've covered? Right? So that's if I have time to take questions.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Or I can say, for those of you that still have questions about what I've covered, don't worry. There's a recording. I'll be available on Sunday night office hours. You can text me. You can email me. You can pigeon carrier. You can message in a bottle. You can Pony Express it. Okay. But because our class sessions are only 50 minutes long, it's time for me to move on and make sure, right? For those of you that have questions, don't worry. And for the, right? So like, but look what I was saying in the book here, word for word, be deliberate. You don't want to just say, hey, in case you have questions, don't worry, because now I got to move on. Be deliberate. You really want to slow down and take the time to usher, to escort, to facilitate their listening. Again, grab them and hang on to them and take them with you through the speech rather than talk at them or talk to them. I never want there to be separation. Earlier today, as a matter of fact, I'm in the middle of a 3-day online event, and I delivered the Integrity Game keynote this morning. And I wasn't controlling it like I control this, right? I was part of an event where there's a technical director that was doing PowerPoint, and I was advancing my slides through like internet clicker on my phone. Like this amazing thing, like I can't even believe the technology, like super cool. But normally, and I think that you know this, normally when I'm doing my Integrity Game presentation, what I like to do, I'm looking for it now. It's funny, of course, I'm looking for something, can't find it, right? But if let's do this. Let's see if I can get it real quick. Where's my Integrity Game keynote? Here we go. Okay, so let me show you. I'm going to bring this up. Present, and let's go screen share, and let's go here, and let's go here. Okay, can you see my screen now? Yeah?
Coming up.
Okay, so you can see the screen. I'm going to go backwards. So you can see what I'm doing. I'm controlling this right now. You follow? Right? And so normally what I'm doing in this keynote, when I'm moving people along, I get here, and sometimes I have this content blanked out, and I have to click for these words to appear. And then I have to click again for these words to appear. Does this make sense? Because I want people focused on this. Or as I'm leading through the presentation, do you see what I'm doing right now? Hey, we're talking about enrollment or engagement. And there's two ways that we secure enrollment or engagement. Number one, do you see me highlighting evaluation? Do you see me highlighting goal setting right now?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I like to do that. But in the presentation earlier this morning, I couldn't, my mouse doesn't work. Right? So I had to be deliberate about my verbal communication, saying, hey, to the left of your screen, where you see enrollment, beneath that is, and I had to be more deliberate in my language, right? Because I didn't have the extra tool of being able to highlight. Does this make sense? But look, right? The arrows, these are navigational tools. I'm everything about me is I'm trying to navigate and usher and escort. So I'm introducing my overall approach to leadership, but then I say, hey, the Integrity Game. So I let people know the Integrity Game is born in the land of accountability, And then when I move to my next slide, because the presentation is about the integrity game, I'm showing them where the integrity game fits in terms of my overall. And now my next slide is, let's play the integrity game. So now this becomes another orienting slide, and I get to make the analogy of the directory at the shopping mall, right? You're like, I don't want to get lost at the shopping mall,
Yes.
right? So I look for you've heard me say this before, Sue. I look for the big directory, and I look for the big circle, and I look for the big arrow, and everybody can say it with me. You are here, right?
Yeah.
And not only that, but normally, like you could see the whole screen right now. Normally, presenters, they want to see their screen. They're married to their PowerPoint. Well, I asked the technical director, I'm like, hey, can I do gallery view where I could see everybody's faces and their camera open? Because I know this content. Do you know what I'm saying? I could shrink this down to this small. I don't even need to look at it at all, right? So what I wanted to see is I wanted to see people's faces so that now I can get audience interaction, and I can communicate, and I can see who's nodding their head or who's raising their hand, or I can see the comments now that are being typed in. And so now you follow, like I've got an ability to navigate and usher and connect. And that's what I'm getting at. I don't want to screen share, put on my PowerPoint and not see my audience. You follow? I always want to see my audience. I always want to call them out by name. Like, hey, Carol, did Sue just take your answer? Carol, is that what you were going to say? Oh, hey, John, in the chat, I see your comment there. And the degree to which I can let my audience know that I'm connected with them the whole time, I'm invited. And it's risky in public speaking to let audience interaction take place because it can derail where you're headed. You can go into a rabbit hole and lose control of the room, lose control of timing, lose control of the content, lose control of other pieces of the audience. If somebody wants to raise their hand for the wrong reasons, or not the most mature reasons, or not the reasons that integrate with what your purpose is of the speech. You know, you've been there before, Sue, where somebody raises their hand to talk and they just want to complain and go drama, right? You're like, hey, you know, so there's some speakers that say, hey, write down all your questions and hold them to the end, because I can't afford to have any seconds of my presentation interrupted because I've memorized everything word for word, or I do the same thing every single time. Well, even though I end up having the same objectives every time, I never do it the same exact word for word, because I always want audience interaction. I always want audience participation, and I'm going to be willing to make mistakes, right? In order that I never lose connection with my audience. So even this morning, I was like, hey, I know everybody can see the slides, and I know people want to blow the slides up, but can you keep the slides really big where I, on my computer, could do gallery view and I can see everybody's faces? Because I want to see who's taking notes. I want to see who writes down the Kluby snacks. I want to stop what I'm saying and say, oh, somebody's taking a note right there. I must have said something good. Hey, if Johnny's writing it down, maybe Steve wants to write it down. All right, let me get back to what I'm saying. So we are here in the integrity game, and let's get ready to play. And now you can tell the way I do this, like I'm keeping myself on track. I don't have tons of words here. There's not a full incomplete sentence. There's a question there, but does this make sense? And so like everything I'm doing, 100% of what I'm doing is about ushering, guiding. And now people can see it's easy to follow along. It's just easy, right? Somebody attending my speech, they know where I'm at every single moment. Like, hey, Jeff, could you go back? Don't you hate those slides where somebody talks about purpose and then the next slide has gifts, but they can't see the previous slide? You know what I'm saying? Right? So like everything that I do in my preparations is all about connecting with the audience and guiding them somewhere. And so same thing with transition sentences. Hey, now it's like we're preparing to play. Even right here, preparing to play. We're not playing yet. We're preparing to play. Does this make sense? And it's like, hey, now that I've prepared you to play, let's play.
Yes.
So do you see my I got preparing to play and play.
Yeah.
So I'm building transitions and orienting factors and letting my audience know exactly where they are, exactly where I am, exactly where we are together. It's not just what comes out of my mouth. Everything about my preparation for speaking is about connecting with my audience and taking them with me, rather than distancing from myself and talking at or to them and letting them go willy-nilly on their own. Has this been helpful to share this visually?
Yes. Yeah. And it's actually something I hadn't picked up on in the relationship of the preparing to play and let's play to the transition.
Yeah. You are here. Right?
Yes.
That's so important. The worst, not the worst, but Oh, I'm speaking hyperbole. We have enough of that in our country, by the way. Have you ever been in a speech where there's slides up, or a speaker says, "Hey, let me tell you the 7 tips to blankety blank," and some people do this on purpose, by the way. They go, "Tip number 1, all right, tip number 2, tip number 4," and somebody, wait, what's tip number 3?
Yeah.
They're following in a linear, but sometimes speakers got all kinds of stuff they're processing, and you follow. But now as soon as you say, "Wait, I missed number 3," now you're not listening to number 4. Don't worry. Just change your notes later on. Change the 4 to a 3 later on, but pay attention to what the speaker's saying. But the speakers sometimes intentionally confuse people to make them think that they're missing something, to send them to the back of the room to get everything, right? Does this make sense? But have you ever been an audience member where you're looking at the slide and you're looking at your notes and you're listening to what the speaker said and you can't connect the 3? Hey, what I'm writing in my notes doesn't seem to match with what the speaker's saying. What the speaker's saying doesn't seem to match the PowerPoint, and I'm losing track of my linear progression through this. And now you're saying all that to you, and then you're looking at your neighbor, and your neighbor's a freaking idiot, so they're not any help, right? But by the way, one of my high school teachers, one of the kookiest, nuttiest guys on the planet, but boy, did he do some memorable stuff. He says, "Hey, never on test day." First of all, he'd pass out the tests. The guy would sleep in class normally, but on test day, he was so animated. Dr. Kanan, God bless him. He would he would walk up and down the aisles. And he would say, "Go, show me what you know." Okay. I'm like, wow. And then he would say, "Hey, don't look at your neighbor's paper. Your neighbor might be a dummy." Okay, I'm like, whoa! I'm 52 years old. I'll never forget that stuff that I never do at 14, 15 years old. Go, show me. And then I had him after lunch, right, 5th period, and so high school students back in the day, they'd come back smelling like cigarettes. Everybody would walk into the room. They just got back from lunch, and all these teenagers that are trying to be cool because they got their driver's license for the first time. He would say, "Why would anybody want to burn leaves in their mouth?" It's just like super funny dude, right? But don't look at your paper. Don't look at your neighbor's paper. Your neighbor may be a dummy. So here you are in the audience. You're taking notes. You're following along. You're engaged. But the speaker seems to be saying something that's not congruent with the linear note taking. And then you look up for the slide, and the speaker's not on the slide, and the slide's not congruent. And you're like, "Hey, can you go back a slide? Or are you on the next slide?" The physiological response to
incredibly frustrating when it happens.
You hate that, right? And I don't even like to use the word hate, but I like incredibly frustrating. I genuinely dislike, right? It's different than the H word, I know. Okay, but that's I never want my audience ever going through that. Ever. I want my audience to know exactly where they are at all times, every time. I want them to sit. Hey, I'm with Jeff. I don't, I never want them to ask themselves any questions. I just want them to leave. Right? Why ask a question when they could be saying, "Oh, I love that." Like the comments that are coming through in the presentation. "Oh, I love that. Oh, great insight." Oh, and then they're repeating. "Oh, right. Time manages itself." Right? Or, "Oh, retrofit yourself." Or so people are capturing these nuggets that are embedded in my integrity game keynote. They're not saying, "Where is he? What does he mean? Where is he going with this? Hey, can you go back? Hey, can you, at worst, the worst thing I got this morning was, "Hey, can you enlarge the slides?" That was it, because they wanted to get everything, right? Yep. And so I like that. Can you enlarge the slides is a good thing, because now they're leaning in. They know exactly where they are, and they know, right? So I mean, we're talking about, again, effective transitions. It's part of being not a speaker, but an usher, ushering our audiences through our speeches, right? And so I'm looking at the clock now, Sue. Well, not without my favorite last call. We are here. Last call. Comments, questions, jokes, riddles, haikus, limericks, or expressions of gratitude. What do you got, Sue?
It's been a really fun conversation, and I've enjoyed peeling back the layers a little bit on what effective transitions really look like.
They're underestimated. Remember the name of the tip. Right? Look, never underestimate the power of effective transitions. It's like so many things in my life. Not difficult to understand, but difficult to execute, implement, and play. Right? Yeah. The integrity game is easy to understand. It's difficult to play. What is a transition sentence? Oh, I get that. but it's not as easy as it is to get it as it is to implement it and then mix it up and make it creative and make it fun. And now that I've introduced my topic, who's ready to elaborate on my first main point? Now that I've elaborated on my first main point, who's ready to go to my second main point? But you have to learn those fundamentals in order to get creative on top of them.
Yeah.
So you might say things like, I know that you guys loved that first main point, and boy, are you going to love what we're going to talk about next. Transition.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you get more and more confidence as long as you put in the reps on the fundamentals.
Yeah.
More and more creative once you've mastered the fundamentals. Right. What else, Sue? What else you got?
Yeah. No, really nothing else for today. It's been fun.
All right. Well, the clock is at 11:45. How about that? We're going to finish kind of close to the scheduled time. I never have a problem going over if I don't have anything else scheduled, but I do want to get back and shout out to Diane Forster, who is leading her TV Host Maker event. Diane is president. Well, she's one of the higher ups. I forget the exact title, which doesn't matter, but she's got like ownership level stature in the E360 network. She's got 100 TV spots, TV channels, and she's on a mission to fill up all 100 spots with 100 women who she's going to help make them into TV hosts of their own show. And it's incredible because when you have your own show, it's an asset that you can repurpose. You can take it with you anywhere. You get to do your own content. You're not under contract. You don't have to mess with algorithms and this and that and the other. Like all of our content that we put through StreamYard, on Facebook, on LinkedIn and Facebook control all of that. At the end of the day, if they want to change their algorithm, if they want to shut things down, all of this work that we've done, right? So I always download my recordings and keep my own drive, but I can go on and on and on and on and on. I'm so honored to have been invited by Diane to deliver the integrity game and to lead the coaching zone and give one-on-one coaching to her empowered women that are on their journeys to create their own TV shows and get their message out in the world in a greater way. TV is still unrivaled. I mean, it's challenged. There's so many competing interests for our attention, but still there's as a medium is concerned, there's nothing more powerful than television. And Diane Forster is just like, I love what she's doing and I'm honored to be a part of it. So shout out to Diane for anybody that's watching this or a recording of this. But Diane, don't worry, I'm on my way back to your event. And thank you for letting me take time out to do my thing and scheduling the integrity game keynote at 9:30 this morning. Yeah. Hey, and Diane, we trust. And it's just a wonderful relationship. So Sue, thank you for everything that you're doing to make this year so much better for me. I was going to do a Get a Clue in 52 with or without you, and golly, is it so much better with you. And as among the four, it's unique in how it captures our mentor-mentee, our special relationship. We've been in the trenches together for years. You've been following me for a long time, but now you're rising into equity of stature. You're an integrity game certified coach. You're a co-author. So where it used to be just audience member for a talk, now, hopefully I'm a rising tide that's lifting all boats. And I can't tell you how much I love and appreciate you, Sue. So thank you.
And I love you right back.
Okay. I don't know. My fingers are weird. Like that's the arthritic heart. It's still a heart. Okay. All right. Well, all right. That's it for this week. And next week, we're going to go ahead and get into the first of three elements of a conclusion. And then you'll have the elements. And we talk about the forms those take and how they function. So hopefully we're true to the titling of how we set this up. And thanks everybody for those of you that are watching a recording or the replay on social or what, maybe you're in the arena and checking us out in our online membership site where we've got all of our content cooking up. However you're here, thank you for tuning in and reach out to us individually if there's anything that we can do for you one-on-one or in a group setting or offline. We're here to help. All right, Sue, unless there's anything else, that's it for another installment of Get a Clue in 52 for Speakers with Sue Mathieson. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Will do. Thanks, Sue. Bye-bye.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.